Welcome to Ages of Screen, the first and only place for movie reviews. Now, as you know, Ages of Screen hasn't been in the cinema recently due to the whole COVID-19 thing, but that doesn't mean that we're not going to be pushing out any other types of movie reviews from streaming services, all of that. We're here to be bringing you content so you're aware of what's going on out in the world, whether it's to do with movies, games, music, anything. And today is no different in the tech world as we are reviewing the latest version of Ubuntu. What is Ubuntu, you ask? Ubuntu is an operating system. You can think of an operating system as a software that your device, whether it's your tablet, your phone, your computer, your laptop, has that boots up when your device turns on and allows you to run apps, install them, and just do whatever you want with that device. So for example, on a laptop or PC, you would have Windows or Mac or Linux. And Ubuntu is a Linux-based operating system. Now, I'm not going to get into Linux too much because it's a very heavy topic. It's very oversimplified when I'm saying this, but the abridged version is software that allows your operating system to manage the hardware inside of it. But enough about that, let's get into the latest Ubuntu LTS. Now, for those who don't know, LTS stands for Long-Term Stable Release. This means that the OS continues to have security updates, bug fixes, patches, and software releases for the existing applications on the machine for an extended period of time. With a long-term stable release, you'll have these updates going on for 5 years, with enterprise people even being able to extend it for 10 years. Now, the reason why you would have something like that is because you would have companies who want to have a solid operating system which they don't want to change anytime soon to continue running websites, databases, applications that they develop, all of that. They don't want to have to keep on changing their operating system often. So they depend on these LTS releases of operating systems like Ubuntu or other Linux distros like CentOS, for example. Me personally, I prefer using an LTS release compared to a rolling release. Rolling releases are versions of Ubuntu that come out every 6 months, and then there's a new version which you can upgrade to. But I prefer using an LTS because I don't like changing too much. I'm too lazy for that. I'm quite happy using the same applications for a long time without having to get the latest version of it. Microsoft also seem to be going down this route of having an LTS version as well, as they used to release Windows operating systems every 3 years. But now they've had Windows 10 since 2015, which is a long time for Windows to have the same operating system. But the way they go down is that they want to continue releasing the same version, but with just new major updates to the operating system, so it's always up to date. I am curious to see if they continue down this route later on, but we'll see what happens. So in this review, I'm going to be talking about what they've released recently, along with some changes that they've done from 18.04, which is what I was using up until now. So with further ado, let's get into it. 20.04, which is the latest Ubuntu version, has made some impressive changes to the operating system, even starting with just installing it in the first place. Some are quite minor and then some are very helpful. From subtle changes like having error checking on the CD when it starts up to make sure it's not corrupt, to even a new little jingle when it boots up the install of the operating system, to even more helpful changes like having the graphics card drivers installed with your operating system. That itself is a major upgrade compared to what was on 18.04 when you had to do that manually after doing the install. And it will help out a lot of gamers and people that use video cards for doing graphic designs and video editing. This is something that Pop! OS, which is a derivative of Ubuntu, also have been doing with their installs of their operating systems. And I'm very happy that Ubuntu has made this change into their base version now. Whenever Ubuntu has the latest version of their operating system, they always release the latest version of applications that they usually have available for users to use. With new software comes a brand new kernel. Now, for some people who don't know what a kernel is, this is exactly what I was talking about when I was oversimplifying what Linux is. Linux is a kernel. It is essentially the software that runs your hardware. Again, I am oversimplifying this, but again, that is what a kernel does. And when there's a new version of a kernel, that means it's new hardware support, new software support, and even fixing bugs that were in previous kernels. Now there may be some people who are disappointed that 5.6 isn't used instead of 5.4. However, I do think this is a good decision because 5.4 is an LTS kernel and some software companies only support LTS kernels with their applications. And on top of this, Ubuntu has backported things like WireGuard into 5.4 to make sure that it's supported. So it's not the end of the world, and if you do want the latest kernel, you could always just install hardware enablement stack to get a newer kernel. Ubuntu has gone over some massive changes in the desktop realm over the years. For when I started using Ubuntu for the first time in 10.04 with Gnome 2, going to Unity, which was their own desktop, to now going back to Gnome with Gnome 3. They have definitely made some interesting changes. Now Gnome 3 to start for me at 18.04 was a bit of a shell shock because I was used to Unity and I quite liked the interface, but they did a good job of integrating Gnome 3 and making it feel like it was at home in Ubuntu. With that being said, there's definitely room for improvement, and Gnome 3.36 has made some massive changes compared to 18.04 in terms of performance, stability, and even new features that will help out users compared to the previous LTS release. So let's get into some of the things that have been improved upon. One of the first things I wanted to start talking about is the fact they've done some changes to how themes are done. Now normally you would use software which is called Gnome Tweaks, which allows you to change the way that your theme looks from light mode, standard, and in dark mode. However, this is now integrated into Gnome itself, so you can now have dark mode on your operating system by default without having to use Gnome Tweaks, which carries over to any application it can. And for you Evolution users like myself who had issues with dark mode, yes, it's been fixed since 18.04, and you can now be happy knowing that you can finally see your text. One of the only things you may notice is that the notification menu and the side menu are still in light mode even when you change to dark mode. This still means you have to install the user theme Gnome Shell extension on your desktop so you can get it into dark mode. However, this isn't too difficult, and once you've done it, you're good to go. One thing that's been quite convenient is the fact that they've added a Do Not Disturb button which you can toggle on your notification settings. So now you won't get any new pop-ups from any of your applications whatsoever. The lock screen has been changed as well. Before you would have two backgrounds, one for your desktop and one for your background. However, now with the latest version of Gnome, it's now a transparent background whenever you lock the screen. Speaking of lock screens, passwords. They've now allowed you to visibly see your password when you're typing it out, so you know if you made a mistake or not when you're entering it in. It's not just for lock screens, it's anything Gnome related that requires your password when you're installing anything. Settings has also had a revamp in how it's been structured. For example, devices section is completely no more. They moved everything over to the main menu with some things now being in other places. It even took me a little while for me to figure out some of the new things and how it was structured. For example, when you're going to display and you're going to the nightlight, it's actually a tab within the display settings rather than actually being in a section in the menu. And finally, which I find a bit of a weird one, is extensions. So normally you have Gnome Tweaks, right? This is where you have all your extensions for Gnome, and this is where you install it. However, it seems that the latest version of Gnome seems to have its own extensions now built in, where you can manage them. Now, I'm kind of wondering if this means that they want to slowly get away with Gnome Tweaks and migrate everything built into Gnome itself rather than using the application, but only time will tell on that. It is weird that they've added that considering that you have Gnome Tweaks to do the same thing. However, I have noticed that if you go into Gnome Tweaks, some extensions are turned off on Gnome Tweaks when they are turned on in Ubuntu on the Gnome Extensions application itself. One of the final things I wanted to talk about is Software Center. So Software Center is now the Snap Store, which now favors Snap packages over the normal apt packages that you can install from the command line, but it does still allow you to install Debian packages. However, as of the review I was doing with the beta version of Ubuntu, Debian packages were not installing on my Snap package. Now I have been looking at the forums and apparently this is being fixed in the daily builds, but I can't confirm that, but I'm very sure that should be fixed, as they did state it was going to work by the time of release. If that changes, I'll make an annotation on the video to state that it's working when the final version comes out. For those who are wondering what snaps are, Snap is a system that was created by Canonical, which are the creators of Ubuntu. It is an easy way of packaging and managing the software that people like Mozilla for Firefox, Google Chrome, etc. make and deploying it onto your machine. In that way, they are similar to normal ways of installing packages within Ubuntu, but there are some differences. For example, in an LTS version of Ubuntu, like I've said before, they do not always have the latest version of applications. So for example, you will not get a major release of LibreOffice, which is a document writer, on your Ubuntu, but you will get the minor version. Now there are some ways around this. You can use third-party repositories to upgrade these packages and then upgrade the software, but you are at the mercy of the third party making sure that they built the software correctly and not broken anything. And the second thing is that if your other software that uses those packages needs those lower graded versions to run, it could break it. And you have no way of fixing that except for reverting back to where you were before and then going back to the older version anyway. Now snaps are very different for several reasons. Snap packages are in their own contained space, which means they have no access to your operating system at all. They are stuck to one place only, and that's it, unless specified by you when you are happy to install packages that need to have access to your system. With it being in its own container, it fits the application itself and all the packages needed inside that one container and then runs it from that specified container, which means it doesn't affect any software inside your machine to run. And if you want to get rid of it, it's fine. It gets rid of only the container itself, and that includes all the packages that came with the container. Nothing is affected from your system whatsoever. This is a good thing because it means that if you do decide to use an LTS version of an operating system and you use snap packages, you can get the latest version of an application without having to worry about or compromising your machine by using third-party repositories. It's all in the Snap Store, available for you to get the latest bleeding edge whenever you want to. Or you can keep to using the older versions of the software. It's completely your choice. Well, this all sounds too good to be true. There has to be some drawbacks, right? Well, there kind of is. So these containers are compressed down, and when they need to run, they then expand and then mount onto your machine so you can use them. Now this means that the startup time can be quite slow. Now Ubuntu have done a great job of improving the startup time on snaps. Compared to where they used to be before, it is like night and day. They were very slow at the start, but they've really improved this. But there are still some differences to startup times on applications, which is why some people are not in favor of the fact that Ubuntu comes with the Snap Store by default now. So for example, this is me trying to run PyCharm on the Snap version versus the standard application version. Now there's not a lot of time difference between that, but for some people that can be a pain point for them. And I must stress this enough, it is only the startup time that is slow. Everything else about the application is just as fast as the standard version and there's no problems with running it otherwise. However, there's definitely room for improvement for Ubuntu to continue working on this. For me personally, I'll use a mix of normal packages and snaps. I think snaps are really great because they allow you to easily install packages where you would have to usually go to a website from the official provider and then download it and then install it. Whereas if you just go to the Snap Store, you can just type in the name of what you're looking for, click and install, and it's done. You can get beta versions or the stable version. It's completely your choice. And it's just easy to use for a lot of people. For example, with installing Spotify, you have to add the repository to your machine, make sure you have the trusted key, and then install app. Now for most standard Linux users, that's fine. It's very simple to do this. But for beginners, it's very scary using the command line and then doing this. Even if there are instructions, it takes a while for people to feel comfortable to do this. So just having a Snap Store where you can just search these things, install it, and then you're good to go, it makes life a lot easier for people who are just getting into using Linux for the first time. And I think Ubuntu have done a really good job, and I appreciate them for making something that simplifies the process for a lot of people. So, with 2004 being released, what's my final thoughts of it? I personally think Ubuntu has set the standard for how desktops for standard users and even advanced users should be done. They have done a great job of improving what has been from 1804 to 2004. It has been a massive improvement in terms of stability, how it performs, and I'm very impressed with the changes they've done. I'm very excited with this release because I think they've done an impressive job with taking people's opinions at heart and then working to improve on the performance of the operating system. And it just keeps on getting polished with each iteration of Ubuntu. I look forward to seeing what the next LTS comes out in the next few years' time to see what they can do next. My score for this latest version of Ubuntu is 9 out of 10. Ubuntu have done it once again. They give me that feel game back when I started using 10.04 for the first time. They've done a really good job with polishing the desktop for Gnome 3 since they moved over to it. And I can't wait to see what else they make in the future operating systems. So I hope you've enjoyed this. I hope you liked it. If you want to know more about Linux, I'll put a few videos down below that just explains things about Linux and kernels if you're interested. If you like this review, let us know in the comments to see if you want to know more about tech reviews or anything Linux related. I'm happy to talk about this, happy to go into these type of things. And as always, thanks for watching and take care.